Let's get to our panel now. And Watson Consulting's founding partner, Darrin Barnett, will be joined by Liberal Party Federal Vice President Fiona Scott as well soon. Darrin, the federal government's been criticised by the coalition for really hanging Jewish people out to dry on this issue of votes at the UN, the rise in anti-Semitism. Can they do both? Can they change their position at the UN and combat anti-Semitism in Australia?
Jewish Australians and also Jewish representatives or Israeli representatives at the UN are not interested in any motion that does not consider the role of UNRWA, that does not rule out Hamas being part of any future leadership, and does not take into consideration the 100 or so hostages who are still held within the territory. But equally, there are those that are more humanitarian, or not a more humanitarian, but a different take on their humanitarian position, that things need to come to a ceasefire because at the moment there is the killing of innocent people, and therefore that we need to find a common sense solution. Very difficult to solve. Both sides, I can see the reasons why both camps hold the views that they do, and trying to get any sort of uniform agreement through the UN or any other multilateral organisation is a very, very difficult exercise. But on the domestic front, I think we do need to see incredibly strong leadership from the government, and we've seen it from Anthony Albanese in recent days, we've seen it from Josh Burns, we've seen it from others, but the line needs to be strong and it needs to be held. Anti-Semitic attacks in Australia are not on, full stop. There is no rationale for any sort of slogan, any sort of fire, any sort of anything really. And as you know, Kieran, I live in Wentworth, and this is the epicentre of certainly Sydney's unrest in terms of anti-Semitic sentiment, and people are, I wouldn't say they're necessarily fearful, but they're certainly annoyed, and they're very upset by the fact that what should have ended after the end of the Second World War is coming back again, and it has been coming back creepingly for some time. That there is disappointment and sadness.
Weekly protests in some of our cities, certainly Melbourne's been a big part of it, and I know law enforcement have tried to prosecute against the use of hate symbols, but should there be more of that? Should we see more of our security agencies as well as government pushing back against the scourge of anti-Semitism?
Personally, I'm in favour of strengthening the rules so that we do not see any anti-Semitic tropes, any identification, any signs. I find it thoroughly, deeply offensive. So I have no problem if our agencies or police or whoever else stamp out those images from protests. I don't have a problem with people protesting. I don't think we can hit that right to protest. But equally, having images that send messages of hate, completely unacceptable.
I want to ask you about this developing news out of Melbourne. John Pesciuto, the opposition leader, has been found to have defamed one of his former MPs, damages to the extent of $300,000. There is pressure now on his leadership. There's talk internally, according to our correspondent in Melbourne, Simon Love. This is hard to imagine a leader, how you navigate such a diabolical result in the court and can rebuild from that.
I've never met Mr. Pesciuto. He's probably a nice guy, but he's kind of in an untenable position. If his head doesn't roll now, he certainly won't last until the next election. So I suspect anyone with leadership ambitions is quietly lining up for what, frankly, is now an inevitable downfall.
Yes, it looks like it. And on this jobs number out today, rather than edge up, as many economists had thought, it's gone down. This feeds into the RBA thinking ahead of their next board meeting. It is several months away, more data to come in, but the government looking at everything and hoping and keeping its fingers crossed it can get a rate cut before it goes to the polls. The next RBA board meeting not until mid-February.
True, and there's a lot of water to go under the bridge until then. I think retail sales through Christmas is going to be probably more significant than the job number. Granted, it has gone down from 4.1 to 3.9%, which is a good thing in a general sense. Not a good thing if you're looking for an immediate rate cut, but the real primary focus, people in jobs, is a good story for the country, and therefore we have to just wait and see what happens over summer. February's still a long way off, but you're correct in saying that the government would definitely prefer a rate cut before the election, perhaps 2 rate cuts. So we just have to wait and see, because it's a long, long way till February.
It is, Darrin, great to chat as always. Thank you. We've had an issue with Fiona Scott, unfortunately, have some problem getting to the studio. So nice to chat to you anyway, Darrin. Thanks for being here this afternoon.